Yes, a very good evening to you, Peter, and to the listeners.
All right. Before we get to the suspended Secretary General, perhaps we can talk a little bit about President Zuma, his address today. As I said, some of the things you almost had to read between the lines, but in others he was quite clear and calling the faithful to vote and to keep the ANC in power.
Yes, pretty much. Former President Jacob Zuma is unequivocal in his stance that he's still very much organizational when it comes to ANC's internal processes. He still feels pretty much that the ANC is the only vehicle that can bring South Africa to the land of milk and honey. When it comes to service delivery, he still feels that and was unequivocal when he said that all South Africans must go out to the polls on the 1st of November and cast their vote next to the emblem of the African National Congress. He's saying that despite the challenges that the ANC is facing, despite the breakdown in the rule of law, despite there being some within the African National Congress that are using the judiciary to fight political battles, and that him being prosecuted without having his own day in court, despite the Constitutional Court giving him on a number of numerous occasions for him to present his case and him refusing to do so, that he was jailed without a trial, but he is still saying he's got faith in the ANC, and that ANC members who feel as if the leadership of the ANC are not standing up to the true values and ethos of the ANC and not representing the organization as they know it to be, they must now start preparing for the 55th National Conference of the ANC in 2022 to change the leadership of the African National Congress, which is essentially saying to you that he was laying down the gauntlet to the RET forces to start mobilizing for the 2022 conference of the ANC, but also taking a swipe at those ANC leaders who are promoting independent candidates in order for them to remove the ANC from power, saying that is unorganizational. And that will feed into the hands of those enemies who are trying to destroy the ANC from within, for that the ANC loses power and the ANC goes into coalition governments, saying that they must not let themselves to let their anger get to them, but they must go out and vote for the ANC.
All right. Well, one ANC leader who was there is somebody that you spoke to a couple of months ago, and that's the suspended ANC Secretary General, Ace Magashule. Take us back to the conversation that you had. I guess at that time, you probably had no idea what would be coming a couple of months later and the Public Protector's report.
It was pretty clear from the onset from 2019, around September, after the Mail and Guardian's then reporter Thando Xolojiga, who's now with the Sunday Times, broke the story of Oscar Mabuyane and Babalo Matigizela, the ANC's provincial secretary, who was the then Alfred Ndlovu treasurer of the ANC in that particular region. Oscar was still the provincial secretary of the funds that were sent to Oscar Mabuyane's wife, which is 450,000 rands for the renovation of Mabuyane's home, and also the Jeep Chevrolet, which was bought for the then provincial secretary of the ANC, Oscar Mabuyane, to utilize as the PS of the ANC, which was subsequently registered under the ANC's name and taken into Oscar Mabuyane's private name, and then subsequently sold for Audi Q7. And the work not done from when Olonwabo Bam's Mtombeni projects invoiced to the Mbizane local municipality, later to be named Winnie Madikizela Mandela local municipality, particularly for the memorial lecture on the passing of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, which is the source of the funds which was essentially used to bankroll Oscar Mabuyane's family through his wife, and also the channels of money that were used in connection to how it was facilitated by Babalo Matigizela, who has also since gone to the High Court in the Eastern Cape to set aside the Public Protector's report on the remedial action for the Hawks to investigate and for the Hawks to prosecute Babalo Matigizela, the provincial treasurer of the ANC and MSc of Public Works, and to prosecute Oscar Mabuyane, who's also interdicted the Hawks from pursuing any further investigation against him. But what is rather surprising here is that the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, has been sitting on this particular docket of Oscar Mabuyane and Babalo Matigizela for the past 5 months, and it was submitted to them by the Hawks when the final investigation was done. So it's pretty much a futile exercise for Oscar Mabuyane to interdict the Hawks from investigating him further, because that investigation is done. That report is now with that docket is now with the National Prosecuting Authority for them to prosecute Oscar Mabuyane, and it's not forthcoming. The Secretary General of the ANC, who suspended Ace Magashule, when we spoke to him, he essentially laid down what was pretty much obvious. The reports that were out by Tandukolo Jiga, who was then a senior investigative reporter for the Mail and Guardian, on Lonwabo Bam's shenanigans and nefarious business interests of getting monies from municipalities without having any work done, allegedly, and the influence of senior politicians within the ANC in the Eastern Cape, whom allegedly had a fraudulent relationship with Lonwabo Bam, who himself has a lot of questions to answer to, from receiving monies from municipalities for work not done, and those who received those funds who were fraudulently stolen from municipalities and facilitated them, which is Babalo Matigizela allegedly, and Oscar Mabuyane, who was the alleged recipient of that 450,000 rands and that jeep that was bought for him by Lonwabo Bam's company Mtombeni Project, which had not done any work for the Mbizane local municipality. So those three individuals were involved in alleged fraudulent activity, which they all have to speak. I did speak to Lonwabo Bam earlier on today, who said that he had been directed by the Hawks not to conduct any interviews, as he will be a star witness should the National Prosecuting Authority decide to prosecute Oscar Mabuyane and Babalo Matigizela. In essence, he may have turned to its state witness, and he, as Ace Magashule said in that particular interview that we did with him, that Lonwabo Bam had taken this information and emailed it to all the top 6 members of the African National Congress.
So why do you think that suspended Secretary General Magashule raised that issue in the interview with you?
Ace Magashule essentially raised these issues of Oscar Mabuyane in that interview because it's pretty obvious. There is a raging war going on within the African National Congress. There is a raging battle for the control of the Eastern Cape. Currently, the Eastern Cape is largely dominated by the CR17 faction within the ANC, which is in line with Gwede Mantashe, which Oscar Mabuyane is an ally of Gwede Mantashe, an ally to Enoch Godongwa, the ANC's head of economic transformation, and now Minister of Finance in the country, who is largely Oscar Mabuyane's political ally and Oscar Mabuyane's political mentor, who hails also from the Eastern Cape. So it's Ace Magashule fighting for the control of the Eastern Cape through the likes of Andile Lungisa. So it's not only about service delivery, these issues. It's not only about corruption. It's all about the road heading to the 55th National Conference of the African National Congress, as those preparations by all the factions, the RET faction, and also the CR17 faction, long started. When you hear former President Jacob Zuma today speaking about how leaders can be changed and how, if you're not happy with the leadership of the ANC, start discussing that internally and take it to the 55th National Conference, is essentially laying down the gauntlet for the RET forces to start preparing and to start coordinating themselves for the 55th National Conference of the ANC.
And I guess a big challenge for, I'm just trying to think who's in the middle of this, the Hawks, the NPA, is that you've got President Zuma saying that the judiciary and the police forces, all of them are being used for political gain. You've got Oscar Mabuyane saying the same thing, and you've got Ace Magashule saying exactly the same thing.
Law enforcement agencies in this country have a history of being used for political nefarious gains by all factions. There were allegations that former President Mbeki was using the National Prosecuting Authority, using the then Scorpions, to fight political battles in the persecution against former President Jacob Zuma. You saw the inception of the Hawks. You saw how the Hawks have finally found their claws once again now, with the introduction of Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of South Africa, president of the ANC. They are seemingly going out and nabbing all of those who are stealing the funds of public servants and South Africans at large. You've got all these counter allegations by politicians saying that these law enforcement agents are being used for political battles. That's not a new manuscript within South African politics. Politicians have been saying that since time immemorial. Just today or yesterday, you had those who are supporting Mandla Msibi in Mpumalanga, saying that Refilwe Tsipane, who's the premier of Mpumalanga, and also the MEC of Economic Development and Finance in Mpumalanga, are using state institutions to go after Mandla Msibi. So it's the paranoia of South African politicians. When they find themselves in trouble with the law, they then backtrack to political tactics in saying that law enforcement agencies are being used to persecute them, instead of them introspecting and saying, hey, I may have done something wrong here. I may have had my hands in the cookie jar. I may have benefited from fraudulent funds from business people who are invoicing municipalities for work not done in order to benefit us who are in power and sitting at Galata House, sitting at Chuli House, sitting at Walter Sisulu House, or any provincial office of the ANC for their own nefarious gains to the public funds of South Africans in order for them to live in the largesse that they currently live in.
Samkele Maseko, thank you very, very much indeed for that update. Always good talking to you.